A few days later, I made one final decision. The house. The deed was still in my name. Legally, it belonged to me. For years, I convinced myself it was their home. But they'd already shown me exactly how they saw me. Not as a daughter. Not as family. Just as someone who paid the bills. So I quietly listed the property for sale. Within a week, I accepted an offer from a young couple expecting their first baby. For the first time, the house was going to become a real home. 2 weeks later, my parents returned from their vacation. My phone exploded with missed calls. Then came the texts. Rachel, call us. What happened to the house? Why don't our keys work? I drove over one last time. They were standing in the driveway with their suitcases. My father looked confused. My mother looked furious. My brother demanded answers. You sold our house? I stayed calm. It was never your house. Silence. I bought it. I paid for it. And the deed has always been in my name. Nobody spoke. Then my mother whispered, How could you do this to your family? I looked at her for a long moment. I've been asking myself that same question. There wasn't anything else to say. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply turned around and walked back to my car. Some endings don't need one last fight. They just need one person willing to walk away. The months that followed weren't easy. The fraudulent accounts were removed one by one. My credit slowly recovered. The legal process took time, but eventually the truth caught up with everyone involved. As for me, I bought a small townhouse across town. Nothing fancy. Just a quiet place with a little porch where I could drink coffee every morning without my phone ringing with another request for money. For the first time in years, my paycheck stayed in my own bank account. My weekends belonged to me. My peace belonged to me. And I finally understood something that had taken me most of my adult life to learn. Real love never sends you an invoice. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't ask you to earn your place. If someone only values you when you're paying the bill, they're not protecting your heart. They're using it. Walking away from my family was the hardest decision I ever made. But it was also the first decision I made entirely for myself. Sometimes losing the people who never truly loved you is how you finally find your own life. Hey, how's the vacation? I laughed bitterly. I'm not on vacation. 10 minutes later, she pulled into the driveway. I handed her the letters without saying a word. She read quietly, then looked up at me. Rachel, what? I think someone may be using your identity. The words didn't even sound real. My parents wouldn't do that. Lauren didn't argue. She simply pointed at the stack of envelopes. They didn't accidentally end up in a kitchen drawer. Silence filled the room. For the first time all day, I stopped making excuses for everyone else. I opened my laptop, logged into my banking apps. Everything looked normal. Savings. Checking. Credit cards I recognized. Nothing unusual. For a moment, I wondered if maybe I was overreacting. Then Lauren asked one simple question. When was the last time you checked your full credit report? I froze. I never had. I monitored my bank accounts constantly, but I'd never looked at the complete history attached to my name. Lauren slid the laptop closer. Do it. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Something told me that once I clicked that button, my life would never look the same again. I took a deep breath and signed in. Rachel thought the unopened letters were the shocking part. She had no idea they were only the beginning. The moment her full credit report loaded, years of hidden accounts, forged signatures, and devastating family secrets would finally come to light. And the choice she made next would change every one of their lives forever. The loading circle on my laptop seemed to spin forever. Then my full credit report appeared. At first, everything looked normal. Then I scrolled. One credit card I didn't recognize. A personal loan. Another credit card. A line of credit. Store financing. More accounts. More balances. More payments. My name was on every single one. My social security number. My date of birth. But none of them belonged to me. Lauren looked over my shoulder and quietly said, Rachel, this has been happening for years. I couldn't speak. Some accounts had been opened almost 10 years earlier. While I was working overtime to help my parents pay their bills, someone had been borrowing money in my name. The room suddenly felt too small. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was a victim of a crime. The next morning, I met with an attorney. She carefully reviewed every document I'd collected. When she finally looked up, her expression was serious. Rachel, this isn't a misunderstanding, she said. This is identity theft. Hearing those words out loud hurt more than I expected. Because identity theft by a stranger is one thing. Identity theft by your own family is something else entirely. Following her advice, I froze my credit immediately. Then I filed reports with the proper authorities and disputed every account that wasn't mine. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting the life I had spent years building. Behind that bedroom door was a secret that would force her to question everything she believed about her family. And once she discovered the truth, there would be no going back. The bedroom door creaked open. For a second, I honestly thought I had walked into the wrong room. The pale blue walls I had painted with my mom years earlier were gone. They'd been replaced with bright white paint. The bookshelf I built for my dad's birthday had disappeared. The framed photos I'd left on the dresser were nowhere to be seen. The room didn't look abandoned. It looked erased. The closet door stood open. Every hanger was empty. No winter coat. No spare clothes. Not even the old sneakers I'd always kept there for weekend visits. I slowly opened the dresser drawers. Empty. Top drawer. Empty. Bottom drawer. Nothing. It was like I had never existed in that house. Then I noticed a cardboard box sitting in the corner. Black marker covered the side. Donation. I walked over and peeled back the tape. Inside were old sweaters, a faded college hoodie, a few family photo albums, and a birthday card my grandmother had written before she passed away. Someone had packed up pieces of my life, like they were cleaning out a stranger's attic. I sat on the floor holding that birthday card, trying to understand how the people I'd spent years helping could throw me away so easily. After a few minutes, I wiped my face. Crying wasn't going to answer my questions, so I started looking. The kitchen looked almost the same. Same coffee maker, same wooden table, same curtains. But one drawer near the refrigerator wouldn't close all the way. I pulled it open. Inside was a thick stack of unopened envelopes held together with a rubber band. At first, I thought they belonged to my parents. Then I saw the name. Rachel Morgan. My name. My full name. One envelope came from a bank. Another from a credit card company. Another from a lender I'd never heard of. My heart started beating faster. Why was my mail coming here? I had lived in my own apartment for years. I checked the dates. Some were recent. Others were several years old. This wasn't a mailing mistake. Someone had been collecting my mail. I lined the envelopes across the kitchen table. 1, 2, 5, 10, more than 20 letters. Every single one addressed to me. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. Front. Back. Every envelope. Something inside me kept saying, document everything. One envelope had come partially unsealed. I hesitated, then carefully pulled the letter out. It wasn't a bank statement. It was a loan notice. According to the letter, someone had recently applied for a personal loan using my information. The application had been denied. I stared at the page. I had never applied for any loan. Not recently. Not ever. My hands began to shake. If this application existed, how many others were there? I immediately called my best friend, Lauren. She answered on the second ring. When people get comfortable. As I pulled into the driveway, something immediately felt different. The flower pots I'd bought were gone. The front porch swing had been replaced. Even the welcome mat wasn't the one I'd picked out. Maybe I was imagining things. I grabbed my overnight bag and walked to the front door. I slipped my key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. I frowned. Tried again. Nothing. Maybe the key was bent. I tried my spare. Still nothing. The locks had been changed. I just stood there staring at the door. No phone call. No warning. No explanation. Just locked out. A voice behind me interrupted my thoughts. Rachel? I turned around. It was Mrs. Carter, the elderly neighbor who had lived next door for years. Oh, honey, she said, walking toward me. I didn't know you were coming back. What do you mean? She looked confused. I thought your parents told you. Told me what? She hesitated. They had all the locks changed last month. My stomach dropped. Did they say why? She shrugged. Something about keeping unwanted people out. Unwanted people. Those words echoed in my head. Mrs. Carter studied my face for a moment before speaking again. They left a spare key with me, for emergencies. She smiled kindly. I assumed you'd already had one. I swallowed hard. I did. Without another question, she disappeared into her house. A minute later, she returned holding a small brass key. I thanked her quietly. She squeezed my hand. You take care of yourself, sweetheart. I nodded. Then I turned back toward the front door. My hand trembled as I slid the spare key into the new lock. This time, it turned. The door slowly creaked open. The house was completely silent. Something about the silence felt wrong. Not empty. Prepared, as if someone knew I might come back one day, and made sure there would be nothing waiting for me. I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the hallway. Every family photo that included me was gone. Only pictures of my parents, Ethan, Melissa, and little Emma remained. It was as if I had never existed. My heart started pounding. Then I walked toward the guest bedroom, the room my mother always called Rachel's room. I reached for the doorknob, took a deep breath, and slowly pushed the door open. What I saw inside made every moment at the ferry feel small. Rachel thought being left behind at the ferry was the worst betrayal she would ever experience. She was wrong. Have you ever paid for something so everyone you loved could be happy, only to realize you were never invited in the first place? Because that's exactly what happened to me. My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm 33 years old, and for nearly a decade, I believed that helping my family was the same thing as being loved. I couldn't have been more wrong. It all started on a bright Friday morning in Charleston, South Carolina. I was standing in line at the ferry terminal with 2 boarding passes in my hand and a suitcase at my feet. The ocean breeze smelled like salt, sunscreen, and summer. This vacation had been my gift. My parents had always dreamed of spending a week on a private island resort, but they could never afford it. So after my business had its best year ever, I surprised everyone. I paid for every ticket. My parents, my younger brother Ethan, his wife Melissa, even my niece Emma. Watching them smile when I handed them the reservation envelopes made me feel like every late night and every sacrifice had finally been worth it. I thought this trip would bring us closer. Instead, it destroyed everything. While I waited to board, my phone buzzed. Mom calling. I smiled and answered. Hey, where are you guys? She didn't even say hello. Rachel, don't get on the ferry. I laughed. What are you talking about? There was a long pause. Then she said something I'll never forget. Your father thinks it'll be better if it's just immediate family. For a second, I honestly thought she was joking. I am immediate family. Another silence. Then, please don't make this harder than it has to be. The line went dead. I stared at my phone. Around me, families laughed, kids chased seagulls, and couples took selfies before boarding. Meanwhile, I stood completely frozen. I called my dad, straight to voicemail. I called Ethan. He declined my call. I texted Melissa. No reply. That's when I looked toward the ferry. And there they were. My entire family. Already boarding. Nobody looked back. Nobody came to explain. Nobody even pretended to feel bad. The same people whose vacation I had paid for walked onto that ferry as if I didn't exist. The boarding gate closed. A worker smiled politely. Ma'am, are you getting on? I forced a smile. No, I changed my mind. He nodded and moved on. I stood there until the ferry disappeared across the water. Then I walked back to my car. The drive home should have taken 30 minutes. Instead, I found myself turning onto the road that led to my parents' house. Or at least, the house I had bought for them. 3 years earlier, my parents had almost lost their home after my father retired. They were embarrassed. They never asked for help. So I quietly bought them a beautiful little farmhouse outside the city. I kept the deed in my name because my accountant recommended it for tax reasons. At the time, my mom hugged me with tears in her eyes. You'll always have a home here, she whispered. Funny how promises change.